South China Sea, October 17, 1944, 02:19. The sea was a sheet of black glass, and the USS Devilfish was a ghost. Inside the submarine, the air was a foul cocktail: 150-degree diesel fumes, stale sweat, and the acidic tang of battery fluid. Commander Elias Thorne, pressing his face to the rubber eyepiece of the periscope, ignored the drop of sweat carving a path through the grime on his temple. "Target status?" he whispered. His XO, Lieutenant Miller, stared at the sonar gauge. "Steady pings, Captain. She's still on course. Just a lone Maru, just like Command said. Fat and slow." "She's not alone," Thorne muttered. He swung the scope, scanning the horizon. Nothing. Just the faint silhouette of the Japanese freighter, Koshu Maru, plodding toward the Formosa Strait. The Devilfish was tasked with intercepting it, along with a vital cargo of raw rubber and, intelligence suggested, high-value optical components for rangefinders. "Range, Mark." 2,000 yards, sir." "Bearing, Mark." 090. "Final solution set. Open outer doors, tubes 1 and 2. The familiar hydraulic thud vibrated through the hull. This was the moment. The hunt, the anticipation, the satisfying release. "Fire 1. The submarine bucked as 6,000 pounds of torpedo and compressed air ejected the tin fish. "Fire 2. Another shudder. Thorne kept his eyes glued to the scope, his internal clock counting down. 30 seconds. 40. Impact in 5, 4, 3, 2. A brilliant silent flash blossomed on the Koshu Maru's waterline. A second later, a second flash erupted near the stern. The sound followed. A deep, crushing crump that hammered the Devilfish's hull. "Direct hits. Both fish hit." The sonarman yelled, a grin splitting his face. "All stop," Thorne ordered, a rare smile touching his own lips. "Let's watch her go down." He watched the freighter, mortally wounded, begin its slow, agonizing list to starboard. A perfect strike. A textbook kill. And then, Miller spoke, his voice suddenly 3 octaves too high. "Captain, sonar contact, high-speed screws, bearing 270, and another, bearing 015. They's on top of us." Thorne slammed his eye back to the scope. Out of the darkness, materializing from nowhere, 2 Imperial Japanese Navy destroyers were charging in, their bow waves like white teeth. They hadn't been pinging. They had been waiting. "Dive! Dive! Dive! Rig for deep charge! Get us to 300 feet!" The klaxon screamed. The deck tilted. Men scrambled. But it was too late. The Japanese destroyers were fast. Akizuki class, the deadliest hunters in the fleet. The first ping from the active sonar hit the hull with the force of a physical hammer blow. Ping! 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 "They've got us!" a torpedo man screamed. "Silence in the boat!" Thorne roared. The first pattern of depth charges exploded. The world dissolved into pure, violent noise. The Devilfish was lifted, slammed, and shaken like a rat in a dog's mouth. Lights shattered. Cork insulation rained down. A pipe burst, releasing scalding steam. Hull breach in the engine room. "We're flooding!" Ping, ping. Another pattern of charges detonated, this time closer. The hull groaned, a metallic shriek of metal surrendering to pressure. The submarine was tumbling, out of control. Commander Thorne gripped the periscope handles, his knuckles white. He knew, with sickening certainty, that this was no random patrol. The Koshu Maru wasn't the target. He was. They had been led into a perfectly orchestrated trap. His last thought, as the bulkheads gave way and the icy blackness of the South China Sea rushed in, was not of his family, but a single burning question. How did they know? General Headquarters, SWPA, Brisbane, Australia, October 21st, 1944, 09. The air in the briefing room was thick with pipe smoke and frustration. A massive wall map dominated the room, charting the entirety of the Southwest Pacific area. It was a map of victory. General MacArthur was retaking the Philippines. The Japanese Navy was shattered. The advance was relentless. But one man in the room, Brigadier General Walter Strickland, head of Allied Intelligence Bureau, AIB Signals, saw only the blood. He pointed a wooden dowel at the map. On it, 12 small red circles were drawn. Darwin, Townsville, Port Moresby, Manus, Biak, Morotai, and now the supply depots supporting Lady. These 12 bases, Strickland said, his voice a low growl, are the arteries of MacArthur's entire campaign. They are the airfields, the ports, and the fuel dumps that keep our planes in the sky and our men on the front. He tapped a red pin stuck in the South China Sea. 4 days ago, we lost the USS Devilfish. The week before, a B-29 Pathfinder group flying out of Biak was intercepted by a squadron of Zeros that knew their exact altitude and vector. The week before that, a commando raid on a fuel dump in Morotai was met by a reinforced platoon that was waiting for them. He threw the dowel on the table, where it clattered against empty coffee cups. Gentlemen, we are not just leaking, we are hemorrhaging. The Kempeitai, or possibly the Tokeitai naval intelligence, is running a penetration network so deep and so fast, they are anticipating our moves before we make them. They have a source. One source, we believe, that is feeding a dozen mouths. A younger, clean-shaven signals officer, Major Davies, spoke up. Sir, we've analyzed all SIGINT. There are no high-level cipher breaks from the Japanese side. It's not signals. Of course it's not signals, Strickland snapped. It's human intelligence. It's an old-fashioned spy ring. And our analysis concludes the hub, the spider at the center of this web, is operating from the one place in the Pacific we cannot touch. He walked to the map and slapped his palm on a tiny, almost forgotten speck on the Chinese coast. Macau. The room was silent. Portuguese Macau. A neutral territory. A nest of vipers, as one report called it. A forgotten colonial backwater that had become the Casablanca of the Orient. A hotbed of smugglers, refugees, gangsters, and spies from every nation, all crowded into a few square miles of decaying European architecture and teeming Chinese slums. The Japanese respect its neutrality, on the surface, Strickland continued. But we know the local Kempeitai chief, Colonel Kenji Tanaka, operates with total freedom. He's the Japanese military attaché, but he's a spook. A very, very good one. He socializes with Portuguese governors, Chinese businessmen, and German agents, all at the Bella Vista Hotel bar. The problem, Strickland concluded, pacing, is that Tanaka is invisible. He uses no radio. His couriers are disguised as fishermen and merchants. He's a ghost. We need to get inside his operation. We need to find his master list. We need to find the key that unlocks those 12 bases. Until we do, our men will continue to sail into ambushes and fly into traps. We are winning the war, gentlemen, but we are losing this fight. Macau, Portuguese colony, November 2nd, 1944, 23:10. The Rua da Felicidade, the Street of Happiness, was a cruel irony. It smelled of stale opium, rank river water, and fear. Agent Badger, a British operative from the Special Operations Executive, SOE, huddled in the alleyway. His cover was a Norwegian shipping clerk. It had lasted 6 days. He checked his sidearm, a compact well-rod pistol, its silenced barrel a comforting weight. His contact, a local fisherman named Lau, was late. Badger had been trying to build a network to find a crack in Tanaka's armor. He had offered money, promises of safe passage, anything. But the locals were terrified. Tanaka's Kempeitai didn't just eliminate threats. They made examples, a sound, a foot scuffing on the cobblestones. Lau? Badger whispered. 2 figures emerged from the fog. Not the small fishermen, but tall men in dark suits. Kempeitai civilian agents. Badger didn't hesitate. He raised the well rod. Pfft! Pfft! The silenced pistol coughed twice. One man crumpled. The second grunted, clutching his chest, but didn't fall. He drew his own Nambu pistol and fired. The shot was deafening in the narrow street. It echoed like a cannon blast. Badger ran. He vaulted a crate, his legs screaming in protest. Shrapnel from a previous mission. He knew the escape route. He drilled it. Down the alley, left at the shrine, into the Fantan gambling house, and out the back. But as he burst into the street, he saw them. A car. More men. They weren't just guessing. They were waiting. Agent Badger's war ended on a dirty street in a neutral city, 1,000 miles from any recognized battlefield. Brisbane, AIB headquarters, November 5th, 1944, 14:30. Brigadier General Strickland read the one-word cable, Sunset, and his face hardened. Sunset was the code for a catastrophic mission failure, operative presumed lost. That's the third one, Major Davies said, his voice hollow. Badger was our best. We sent in a commando. He was found in the harbor. We sent in a signals expert. He vanished from his hotel. Now we send in a seasoned infiltrator, and he lasts less than a week. They're too good, Strickland said, rubbing his eyes. Tanaka's network is sealed tight. We can't break it from the outside. We can't buy our way in. Every attempt we make just confirms his suspicions and makes him stronger. He's liquidating our assets before they even get unpacked. The desperation in the room was a tangible thing. The Americans were losing ships. The British were losing agents. The Australians were losing air crews. The Lisbon Maru ring, the code name they'd given Tanaka's operation, was a fortress. We are using a sledgehammer to pick a lock, Strickland mused, staring at the map. And the lock is only getting more complicated. We need a different kind of tool, not a soldier, not a commando. Davies looked up. Sir, what other kind of tool is there? Strickland didn't answer. He was thinking of a file he had read, a file on a man who was currently languishing in a translation pool, a man who had been rejected by 3 different commando units for being physically unassuming and overly contemplative, a man who spoke 4 languages, including Cantonese and Portuguese. AIB Translation Pool, Brisbane, November 6, 1944, 11:00. The basement office was hot, humid, and smelled of moldy paper. Lieutenant Jack Kanga Riley was drowning in a sea of captured Japanese documents. His uniform was rumpled, his hair perpetually untidy. He wasn't a soldier, he was a librarian in military costume. Before the war, Riley had been a promising linguistics fellow at the University of Melbourne. He specialized in pidgin dialects of the South China coast. When the war broke out, he had rushed to enlist, picturing himself as a dashing commando like the men of the Z Special Unit. The Army pictured him differently. He was 5'8", slender, and wore spectacles. He could field strip a rifle, but he looked like he'd rather be reading its manual. They put him in translation. He was currently deciphering the diary of a captured Japanese corporal, a document filled with mundane complaints about bad food and boring guard duty. Lieutenant Riley. Jack looked up. Brigadier General Strickland was standing in his doorway, a sight so jarring it was like seeing a lion in a chicken coop. Sir? Jack scrambled to his feet, knocking over a stack of files. At ease, Lieutenant. Strickland walked in, ignoring the mess. He picked up a paper from Jack's desk. You've been cross-referencing shipping manifests from Portuguese Goa with laundry lists from Formosa. It's a linguistic drift pattern, sir, Jack said, his voice nervous. The Japanese quartermasters use a specific code, a shop talk, for requisitioning restricted goods. I think I can build a predictive model of their... I'm not here about laundry lists, son. Strickland cut him off, though his eyes showed a flicker of interest. I'm here about Macau. He laid a surveillance photo on the desk. It was grainy, taken from a long distance. A Japanese officer in a crisp white uniform, smiling, exiting the Bella Vista Hotel. Colonel Kenji Tanaka. What do you see? Strickland asked. Jack put on his spectacles and studied the photo. He didn't look at the man's face first, or his uniform. He looked at the details, the way his aide was standing too close, the Portuguese guard looking the other way. Then, his eyes fixed on a small, dark object pinned to Tanaka's breast pocket, just below his medal ribbons. It was a Japanese omamori, a silk good luck amulet from a Shinto shrine. He's not just Japanese, sir, Jack said slowly. He's arrogant. He's displaying a personal religious token on a military uniform. That's irregular. He's showing off. He's telling the world he's untouchable. Strickland nodded. Go on. And this ribbon, Jack said, pointing with a pencil. The omamori is tied with a specific Sonata Hemo cord. The color, it looks like a deep indigo with a gold thread. That's not a standard shrine issue. That's custom. It's a shirushi, a sign. It's a badge of identity. He's not just carrying it, he's wearing it. Strickland leaned in. What if I told you that amulet never leaves his person? And what if I told you we believe the key to his entire spy network, the list, the cipher, something, is inside it? Jack looked up from the photo, his mind suddenly, terrifyingly clear. The boredom of the basement evaporated. "You want me to get it," Jack said. "It wasn't a question. Our commandos and infiltrators have failed," Strickland said. "They went in loud. They went in hard. They were hunters. Tanaka is a spider. You don't hunt a spider with a rifle. You have to be a fly. A fly it doesn't notice until it's already in the web." "You want me to go to Macau?" Jack breathed, the full, insane weight of the idea landing on him. "I want you to become a nobody," Strickland said. "A washed-up Australian merchant, maybe. A gambler, a drunk. Someone so pathetic, so harmless, that Tanaka's men will look right through you. Someone who can get close enough, at the right moment, to do the one thing no one else has been able to." Strickland pointed at the photo. "I need you to steal his ribbon. AIB Planning Room, Brisbane, November 9th, 1944, 08. The room was full of men who embodied the sledgehammer approach Strickland had mentioned. There was a granite-faced American colonel from the OSS, a terse British commander from SOE, and 2 grizzled Australian Z-Unit captains. They looked at Lieutenant Jack Riley like he was a waiter who had wandered into the wrong room. "This is the plan?" the OSS Colonel Hackett demanded, tapping Jack's thin file. "We're pinning the security of the entire Philippine invasion on a translator whose only field experience is, well, he doesn't have any. He has the exact skills we need, Colonel," Strickland said coolly. "He speaks Cantonese, he speaks Portuguese, and most importantly, he doesn't look like a spy. He looks like a clerk." "He is a clerk," one of the Z-Unit captains muttered. Jack stood stiffly, his hands clasped behind his back. He felt his ears burning. "With respect, gentlemen," Jack said, his voice surprisingly steady, "you've been trying to breach the fortress. You've failed. You can't. The Kempeitai expects a breach. They are masters of counter-assault. They are not, however, masters of subtlety. They are, as a culture, incredibly arrogant." Hackett leaned back, humoring him. "And your subtle plan is what exactly, Lieutenant? You're going to ask him for it?" "No, sir, I'm going to let him ignore me," Jack said. "My cover will be Arthur Penn, a failed shipping manager from Darwin. My company went bust, a victim of the Japanese war effort. I'm stuck in Macau, a neutral port, trying to gamble my last few dollars into a ticket home. I'm a mess. I'm a drunk. I am chaff." "Chaff," the SOE commander repeated, intrigued. "The Japanese, especially an aristocrat like Tanaka, despise weakness. They despise men who have given up. He won't see me as a threat. He'll see me as an object of contempt. And people are careless around things they hold in contempt." "It's thin, Riley," Strickland said, playing devil's advocate. "Incredibly thin." "It's not, sir," Jack countered, gaining confidence. "The key isn't the cover. The key is the access. Arthur Penn will spend his days in the Fantan parlors and his nights at the Bella Vista bar. He'll be losing money, complaining about the war, maybe even making some unpatriotic remarks about the Allies. He'll become part of the scenery, a harmless, drunken Aussie, until the one night Tanaka is there celebrating, and his guard is down." Colonel Hackett stared at Jack for a long, hard moment. "And what happens when they see through you, son? What's your exit strategy?" Jack swallowed. "That's the part of the plan, sir. There isn't one. An exit strategy requires a support team, a radio, and extraction points. That's a footprint. A footprint is what got Badger eliminated. I go in with nothing but my cover and a return ticket on a Portuguese freighter that I'll never use. If I'm caught, I'm just a drunk Australian who got in a fight, and you've never heard of me." The room went silent. The Z-Unit captains were no longer smirking. They recognized the bravery, even if it was a kind they didn't understand. "All right, Riley," Strickland said, closing the file. "Let's build your legend. God help you. AIB, House of Tricks, Sydney, November 1944. The prototype was not a machine. It was a man. For 3 weeks, Jack Riley ceased to exist. In his place, Arthur Penn was born. This was not a physical transformation. It was a deconstruction. First, the legend. AIB operatives, working through contacts in Darwin, fabricated a complete history. Arthur Penn, born in Charters Towers. A middling education, a job at a shipping firm, a minor partner thanks to a small inheritance. Then, the Darwin bombings of 1942. His small office, his warehouse, his home, all destroyed. His wife lost. AIB forged the documents to prove it. A worn Australian passport with the right exit stamps, a dog-eared photo of a woman who never existed, a tattered bank book showing a dwindling account, a letter from a lawyer detailing the bankruptcy of his firm. Then, the psychological build. Arthur Penn is not you, Riley. An AIB psychologist, a man named Dr. Miles, told him in a smoke-filled room, "You are hopeful, you are precise. Arthur Penn is empty. He has lost everything. He doesn't care who wins the war. He just wants a drink and a lucky streak at the tables." For hours a day, Jack practiced. He learned to play Fantan and Pai Gow, and how to lose convincingly. He learned to drink gin, cheap, foul-smelling gin, without his eyes watering, and how to slur his words just enough. He practiced a new signature, a lazy, broken scrawl. He wore his new, cheap suit until it was rumpled and smelled of him. But the most crucial part of the build was the tools. "You can't take a weapon," his SOE handler, a man with the face of a skull, told him. "No well rod, no cyanide pill, no garrote wire. The Kempe Tai will search you. They will strip you." "So how do I do it?" Jack asked. The handler smiled. "You're not a killer, Lieutenant. You're a thief. You use a thief's tools." He presented Jack with a mundane object, a Zippo-style lighter. "It works. It's full of fluid. But," the handler said, twisting the bottom casing. A tiny, filament-thin wire, less than 4 inches long, sprang from a hidden compartment. Serrated garrote, not for a neck, for a cord, a thread, a ribbon. Jack looked at the lighter. It was brilliant. "No, it's not," the handler snapped, reading his mind. "It's a trick, and a trick is what gets you caught. You're not taking it." He tossed the lighter in a bin. "Then what?" Jack asked, frustrated. "This." The handler held up a small, flat piece of metal. It was a collar stay, the kind used to keep a shirt collar stiff. "This one is steel. We've had the edge honed to a razor. You keep it in your collar, it's just a piece of your shirt. But in your palm, it'll cut silk in a second." He then showed Jack a British sovereign gold coin. "This is your bribe money, and this..." He twisted the coin. It split in half, revealing a shallow, hollow compartment. "A microdot?" Jack asked. "No, a hiding place. You get the prize, you put it in here, you seal it. You find a way to post a letter, and you stick this under the stamp. It's your only way out." For 3 weeks, Jack Riley practiced walking, talking, and drinking like Arthur Penn. He practiced palming the collar stay and slicing a silk thread in his pocket over and over until his fingers were raw. He was no longer a linguist. He was a ghost, being built from the ground up, designed for one purpose: to drift into a spider's web and cut the thread that held it together. Macau, Portuguese colony, December 12, 1944, 15. The ferry from Hong Kong smelled of diesel, salt fish, and unwashed bodies. Jack Riley, now Arthur Penn, stood on the deck, his cheap suit already plastered to his back by the humid air. He clutched a battered suitcase and looked at the city of the name of God, Macau. It rose from the Pearl River Delta like a fever dream. Portuguese cathedrals crumbling next to Chinese temples, all of it crammed into an impossibly small space. His first test began the moment he stepped onto the dock. 2 men were watching the passengers disembark. One was a listless Portuguese colonial policeman. The other was a compact, sharp-eyed Japanese man in a white linen suit. The Japanese man's eyes scanned everyone. Jack did not try to avoid his gaze. He didn't look nervous. He looked tired, annoyed. He shuffled in the line, mopped his forehead with a dirty handkerchief, and audibly sighed when the man in front of him was pulled aside. When it was his turn, the Japanese man, Kempe Tai no doubt, stepped forward. "Passport." Jack handed it over. The man flipped through it. "Arthur Penn, Australia. You are a long way from home." His English was perfect, clipped. "Tell me about it, mate." Jack slurred, channeling Arthur Penn. "Just here to see a man about a boat. Business." The agent's eyes narrowed. "What business?" "Failed business," Jack said with a short, bitter laugh. "Look, I've got a room at the Central. I'm just here to see if I can win my boat fare back. You know, the tables. He made a small, pathetic gambling motion with his fingers. The agent stared at him. This was the moment. Had he overplayed it? Underplayed it? The agent's lip curled in a tiny sneer. Contempt. Jack felt it like a wave of cold water. He had a word for men like Jack, gaijin, foreign trash. The agent stamped the passport and threw it back at him. Your country is losing the war. Do not cause trouble here. Wouldn't dream of it, Jack mumbled, grabbing his suitcase. War's the trouble. He walked away, his heart hammering against his ribs. He didn't look back. He had passed. He was in. He spent the next 10 days becoming invisible. He checked into the noisy, smoke-filled Central Hotel. He was seen at the Fantan tables every night, and he lost consistently. He drank at the bar, complaining to anyone who would listen about his bad luck and the bloody Yanks who had ruined his shipping business. He saw Tanaka's men. They were everywhere. They saw him too. They saw him lose 500 patakas one night and stumble into the street, arguing with a rickshaw driver. They saw him as exactly what he was designed to be, a harmless, drunken fool. On the 10th day, he was sitting at the bar of the Bella Vista Hotel, nursing a gin, when Colonel Kenji Tanaka himself walked in, surrounded by his aides and several high-ranking Portuguese officials. Jack watched him in the mirror behind the bar. Tanaka was charismatic, laughing, his white uniform immaculate. And there, pinned to his pocket, was the omamori, the indigo and gold ribbon. The test was over. The hunt had begun. Bella Vista Hotel, Macau, December 24, 1944, 2150 Christmas Eve. The neutral city was desperate to celebrate. The Bella Vista was draped in tinsel, and a tinny phonograph was playing White Christmas. The air was thick with cigar smoke, expensive perfume, and the sharp scent of sake from Tanaka's private table. Jack Arthur Penn. Riley was on his 4th gin. He was, to all observers, 3 sheets to the wind. His hair was mussed, his tie was loose. He had spent the last hour complaining to a Swiss businessman about the price of everything. But beneath the facade, Jack was a coiled spring. Every sense was screaming. He had been waiting for this. Tanaka was relaxed, celebrating a string of victories, the sinking of the devilfish, the raids on the air bases. He was holding court. Jack's local contact, a young Chinese man named Chen, was working as a waiter. Chen was not an AIB agent. He was a patriot whose family had perished in Nanking. He was risking his life for this. Their plan was simple, desperate, and it had to happen now. Jack watched Tanaka. The colonel was telling an animated story, his hands gesturing. His omamori was clearly visible. His 2 Kempeitai bodyguards stood 10 feet away, their eyes scanning the room, but they were relaxed, sipping drinks. Jack caught Chen's eye. Chen gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He was ready. Jack stood up from the bar, swaying slightly. He fumbled in his pocket for money. Another round, he slurred, loud enough for the barman to hear. He started to walk, not toward the bar, but in a weaving, indirect path past Tanaka's table, as if heading for the restroom. This was the combat, not a battlefield of bullets, but of seconds, angles, and deception. He saw the Kempeitai guard's eyes flick to him. The guard registered drunk Australian and dismissed him. 1 second. Jack tripped on the leg of a chair. He stumbled forward, lurching directly into the path of Chen, who was carrying a tray of full champagne glasses. 2 seconds. The collision was perfect. Chen, playing his part, shouted in Cantonese. The tray flew. Ice, champagne, and broken glass exploded outward, dousing the 2 Kempeitai guards. They roared in anger, blinded, wiping the stinging liquid from their faces and uniforms. 3 seconds. In that instant of chaos, all eyes, including Tanaka's, snapped to the guards, all eyes but Jack's. He hadn't fallen. His stumble carried him directly to Tanaka, who was rising from his chair. "Oh my goodness, terrible. So sorry, Colonel," Jack mumbled, his hands flapping in apology. He leaned into Tanaka, as if to steady himself. 4 seconds. His left hand braced itself on Tanaka's chest, right on the omamori. His right hand, which had been in his pocket, came up to help. as if to brush glass off the colonel's pristine uniform. In his right palm was the razor-sharp collar stay. It was the work of 1,000 practice runs in a dark room in Sydney. His left thumb hooked the indigo ribbon. His right hand, under the cover of his fumbling apology, swept across. Snick. The sound was non-existent. The feel was like cutting a single thread of silk. 5 seconds. Tanaka, outraged by the commotion, shoved Jack away. "Get this drunken fool out of here," he snapped in Japanese. Jack stumbled backward, his left hand now in his pocket, clutching the amulet. His right hand, with the collar stay, was already hidden. "My apologies, Colonel." "Clumsy." "So clumsy," Jack said, bowing and scraping, backing away. The Kempeitai guards, now furious, grabbed Chen and began to beat him, dragging him toward the door. Jack's blood ran cold, but he couldn't stop. The mission. He backed away, turned, and walked, as quickly as a drunk could, out of the bar, out of the hotel, and into the humid darkness of the Macau night. He didn't run. He walked for 2 blocks, turned into a dark alley, and was violently ill. He had it. He had the ribbon. The entire brutal, cold-blooded operation had taken 6 seconds. Jack's safe house, Macau, December 25, 1944, 01-17. The safe house was a single squalid room above a noodle shop, smelling of mold and anise. Jack locked the door, his hands shaking so violently he could barely turn the key. He sat in the dark, his breathing ragged. The sound of the Kempeitai beating Chen. He forced the image from his mind. Focus. Finish the job. He pulled out the British sovereign. He twisted it. The hollow coin lay in one palm. From his pocket he pulled the omamori. It was a small, beautifully embroidered silk pouch. The indigo and gold ribbon he had cut was still tied to it. With trembling fingers, he untied the knot at the top of the pouch. He had expected a list, a microdot, a cipher key on paper. What fell into his palm was something else entirely. It was a tiny, tightly rolled scroll of silk. It was no thicker than a matchstick and less than an inch long. Using tweezers from his hidden kit, Jack unrolled the scroll. It was covered in microscopic, hand-painted kanji. It was not a list of names. It was a poem, a haiku. Karasu Tobu. The crow flies. His blood froze. This was not a poem. This was a one-time pad cipher key, and beneath it, a list. Not names, but code words. Seagull, tiger, dragon, Red Hill, Iron Bay. There were 12 of them. Seagull. Jack knew Darwin. He knew the massive flock of gulls that circled the harbor. Dragon. The dragon of Papua. Port Moresby. Tiger. The tiger squadrons at Townsville. This was it. The entire network. The code words for the 12 bases. And the haiku was the key to unlocking the next set of signals. Tanaka didn't keep lists. He kept the key to the lists. Without this omamori, the coded messages he sent to Tokyo were meaningless. Jack worked feverishly. He photographed the scroll with a tiny button camera. He transcribed the kanji. He re-rolled the scroll, placed it back in the amulet, and retied the knot. He couldn't replace the cut ribbon, so he left it as it was. He then took the amulet, the sovereign, and the collar stay, walked to the small furnace in the corner, and destroyed them. He only kept the photographs. He now had to get the information out. His only radio was a burst transmitter hidden in the wall, a device that could send his entire message in less than 3 seconds, but which could only be used once. He encoded his message, the haiku, the 12 code words. The stolen ribbon was a success. He set the transmitter. He knew the moment he pressed send, a Japanese listening post in Canton would get a bearing. He would have minutes, maybe an hour, before the Kempeitai kicked down his door. He pressed the key. A faint zip was the only sound. The message flew into the night. The dominoes began to fall. AIB headquarters, Brisbane, December 25, 1944, 04 Yo. Message from Kanga, a signals operator yelled, ripping the translation from his machine. Strickland, who had been sleeping in his office, was there in 30 seconds. He read the decoded message. Seagull, tiger, dragon, Red Hill. Key is haiku, crow flies. Mission compromised, extracting. Strickland stared at the 12 code words. "Get me MacArthur's G2, get me the Navy, get me everyone," he roared. "We have him. We have the bastard. We have the Lisbon Maru." The intelligence community exploded into action. Seagull was Darwin. Tiger was Townsville. In hours, every one of the 12 code words was matched to an Allied base. They had the key. General Headquarters, SWPA, Brisbane, December 26, 1944. "I want them all arrested," Colonel Hackett demanded. "We have the list. Let's roll them up, now." "And then what, Colonel?" Strickland replied, his voice calm. "We arrest a dozen agents. Tanaka knows his network is blown. He builds a new one. In 3 months, we're blind again. We've won a battle, not the war." Strickland turned to the map. "No, we don't arrest them. We use them. We now know their code words. We have their key. We don't just plug the leak, gentlemen. We reverse the flow. We are going to modify the intelligence." This was the birth of Operation Decoy, one of the most brilliant and morally complex counterintelligence operations of the war. The Allies began to feed the Lisbon Maru network. The Seagull agent in Darwin, a local shipping chandler, reported that a massive convoy of troop ships was assembling for a direct invasion of Formosa. The Japanese panicked, diverted 2 submarine fleets to the Formosa Strait, where Allied hunter-killer groups were waiting for them. The Tiger agent in Townsville reported that a new experimental B-30 bomber had a critical design flaw in its starboard wing. For the next month, Japanese fighters ignored the bombers and attacked the escorts, suffering catastrophic losses. The Dragon agent in Port Moresby sent confirmed reports that a batch of Allied torpedoes was faulty. Japanese destroyers acting on this intel became more aggressive, charging Allied submarines, who were now armed with brand new, perfectly functioning magnetic torpedoes. The Kempeitai was now the Allies' most valuable asset. Macau, January 10, 1945. Colonel Kenji Tanaka was in a cold rage. For 3 weeks, every piece of intelligence he had passed on, intelligence from his most trusted, most secret sources, had been catastrophically wrong. His submarines were being sunk. His air alerts were traps. His sabotage missions were walking into ambushes. He knew, with sickening certainty, what had happened. It dated back to Christmas Eve, the night of the party, the night he had lost his Omamori. He had woken the next morning to find it missing. He'd assumed a clumsy waiter or a pickpocket. But now, he knew, that drunk Australian, that Gaijin fool. The crackdown was immediate and brutal. Tanaka, desperate to plug the leak, turned Macau inside out. He wasn't just looking for a spy, he was looking for the man who had humiliated him. But Jack Riley was long gone. After sending his burst transmission, he had walked calmly out of his noodle shop, slipped onto a fishing junk, and disappeared into the Pearl River Delta, melting into the chaos of wartime China, his Arthur Penn persona discarded like a snakeskin. Tanaka's countermeasure came too late. He was hunting a ghost, and his own spies, the Lisbon Maru network, were now actively, if unknowingly, dismantling the Japanese war effort, one false report at a time. Chongqing, Free China, January 30th, 1945. Jack Riley sat in a damp, cold AIB safe house in China's provisional capital. He was safe. He was a hero, and he had never felt worse. He was chain-smoking, his hands still unsteady. He was being debriefed by an SOE officer. "The mission was a 100% success, Riley. You're getting the Distinguished Service Order." Quietly, of course. Jack stared at the wall. "What happened to Chen?" The officer stopped writing. "Chen? Oh, the waiter. The local asset." "He wasn't an asset," Jack said, his voice hard. "He was a partner. He was a patriot." "What happened to him?" The SOE officer sighed and closed his notebook. "He was taken by the Kempeitai, from the Bella Vista. Tanaka's men. They were not gentle. They were desperate. They needed a scapegoat. They needed to show they were in control." "Is he?" Jack couldn't finish the sentence. "He met his end in their interrogation center on Avenida do Conselheiro Ferreira de Almeida," the officer said, his voice flat. "He didn't talk, if that's what you're asking. He held out for 3 days. He never mentioned you. He never mentioned Arthur Penn. He just endured. He was a brave man." Jack closed his eyes. The weight of it settled on him like a shroud. 6 seconds of combat, one cut of a ribbon, and Chen had paid the price. This was the unintended cost. It was the moral calculus of espionage. To save the devilfish, to save the men on the 12 bases, he had been forced to sacrifice Chen. He had walked away, knowing the guards were beating him, because the mission was paramount. He was a hero to Strickland. He was a clerk to the commandos. But to himself, in this cold, damp room, he was the man who had led Chen to his death. "Your operation," the debriefing officer said, trying to fill the silence, "has given us a new problem. Overconfidence. G2 is now so reliant on Operation Decoy that they're planning a major offensive based entirely on the assumption that we control the enemy's intelligence. If Tanaka finds a new source, if he wises up, our own trap could snap shut on us." Jack wasn't listening. He was thinking about the moral high ground. He was a linguist, a man who loved the nuance of words. And now his entire life was a lie, built on a foundation of betrayal and sacrifice. He had saved 12 bases, but he had lost a piece of his own soul in a Macau hotel bar. Lady Gulf, Philippines, February 1945. The Lisbon Maru network was now the Allies' most potent weapon, and it was about to face its final test. Japanese High Command, desperate to stop the flow of men and material into Leyte, planned a massive, coordinated attack. Operation Kengo, it was called. It involved a wolf pack of 20 submarines and a kamikaze strike force, all aimed at the 12 bases, the supply chain itself. And it was all being coordinated by the Kempeitai intelligence flowing from Macau. Colonel Tanaka, now desperate to regain his honor, was feeding Tokyo what he believed was a new, secure stream of information. But he was wrong. Allied double-cross agents, working from Jack's initial data, had already compromised his new couriers. On February 11th, 1945, Operation Kengo launched. It was a massacre. The Japanese submarine fleet, sailing on confirmed coordinates for a massive, undefended Allied convoy, found nothing but 3 U.S. Navy hunter-killer groups. 12 submarines were sunk in 48 hours. The kamikaze squadrons, given priority targets at the Red Hill base, Leyte, flew directly into the largest combat air patrol the U.S. Navy had ever assembled. Not a single Divine Wind aircraft reached its target. The Lisbon Maru spy ring had, in its final act, committed operational suicide. The 12 Allied bases were secure. The supply line to the Philippines was unbroken. The final push for victory could begin. Canberra, Australia, July 1945. Jack Riley stood in a nondescript office. He was in a fresh uniform, his hair neatly combed. Brigadier General Strickland pinned the Distinguished Service Order on his chest. There was no parade. There was no photographer. Just the two of them and Major Davies. "Your file, Lieutenant Riley," Strickland said, holding up a thin folder, "is now classified Alpha 1 Eyes only. As far as the world is concerned, Arthur Penn never existed. Macau never happened. You spent the war translating laundry lists. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Jack said. "What you did, what you and Chen did, saved more lives than a regiment of commandos. You secured the entire Philippine campaign. History will never know it, but we know it, and we are grateful." Jack looked at the medal. It felt heavy. He thought of the Omamori. He thought of Chen. "Thank you, sir," he said. He was demobilized 2 weeks later. The war in the Pacific ended a month after that. The Lisbon Maru file was buried in a vault, and Jack Riley, the clerk who looked like a librarian, faded back into the obscurity from which he had come. Adelaide, Australia, 1998. The suburban backyard was quiet, save for the buzz of cicadas and the snipping of rose shears. An 80-year-old Jack Riley, still wearing his familiar spectacles, was tending his garden. A young woman, a postgraduate historian from the Australian War Memorial, sat on his porch, a tape recorder running. "Professor Riley," she said. He had gone back to the university, become a beloved professor of Asian studies. "Your service record is very thin. It just says, Translation and Analysis, AIB. But you were in Chongqing. You were in Southeast Asia. Were you? Well, were you Z special?" Jack smiled, clipping a dead rose. "Heavens no. I wasn't the type. I just read things. Looked at maps. Not very exciting, I'm afraid. But there are rumors. AIB files are still being declassified. There's a story Just whispers, really, about a spy ring in Macau, the Lisbon Maru ring. They say one agent, an Australian, managed to crack it. They say he saved the Leyte campaign. Jack paused his snipping. He looked at the bright red rose in his hand. War is a brutal business, he said, his voice quiet. We like to remember the big battles, the ships, the planes, the brave men with guns. But the war was also won in other places, in quiet, dirty places, in hotel bars and back alleys. He turned to her, his eyes clear behind the thick glasses. It wasn't won by heroes, my dear. Not always. It was won by ordinary people who were asked to do impossible, sometimes terrible things. And they did them. And they came home and planted roses. He seemed about to say more, then stopped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn leather coin purse. From it, he took a small object. It wasn't a medal. It wasn't a coin. It was a tiny, faded scrap of silk tied in a complex knot. It was deep, faded indigo, with a single tarnished gold thread running through it. A souvenir, he said, placing it in her hand, from a market in Macau. The historian looked at the stolen ribbon. She suddenly understood. The files, the whispers, the thin service record. It all came into focus, culminating in this one tangible piece of history. Jack turned back to his roses. We talk about the cost of war in lives and in treasure, he said, his back to her. But the real cost is in the moral compromises. The things we do in the shadows, hoping to bring the light. The Chens of the world, whose names are never written in a book. He snipped another rose, the sound sharp and final in the quiet afternoon. The real cost is remembering.